everyone can see that times in the US are quite troubling to say the least. And I can't help but notice that so many people are letting the media cause irreparable damage to their peace. And in the worst of cases, it's destroying people's lives. So in this video, I'm going to reveal 3 truths about the media that nobody is talking about. And if you watch till the end, then I guarantee you will see things differently. You may even begin to question your own reality, but most importantly, understanding these truths could quite possibly save your life figuratively and literally. Years ago, I made a promise to never, under any circumstances, publicly discuss my political opinions. And even more importantly, I almost completely stopped consuming the news because I came to believe that today's media climate intentionally creates chaos within society for financial gain. And after I stopped consuming the news, I immediately became less anxious. My stress levels fell, and I had far more capacity to dedicate to more constructive activities that really helped me to elevate my life. And so now I'm convinced that people in society overall would be in a much better state if we recognized news media for the public nuisance that it is, and we started being more intentional about how we consume it, because the present day culture of media and dialogue around current events is quite unnatural. You see, the human brain is wholly incapable of processing the glut of information that the current media climate subjects all of us to. The same way that the American diet and sedentary living is driving an obesity epidemic, the modern information diet and the passive consumption of media is driving a psychological epidemic. You can call it cognitive obesity, if you will. It's the natural result of consuming too much unhealthy information. Let me explain this a little bit further. As you may know, humans are pack animals. We can't survive in isolation. Our strength is in numbers. However, there is a limit to this number. Too many people and our strength begins to fade. Thus, the hunting and gathering lifestyle drove humans to naturally form bands of about 50 people in size, more or less. And in rare circumstances, multiple bands would come together to form larger groups of 150, maybe 200 people, but that's about the extent of it. Now, the neocortex is part of the human brain that distinguishes us from other animals. It's responsible for higher order skills like reasoning, language, emotional control. And it's also what gives us the ability to form complex relationships with other people to the degree that allows for cooperation. But the neocortex has a cognitive capacity, which when it comes to managing social connections, it's capped at about around 150 people. This is known as Dunbar's number. So about 10,000 years ago, when hunter-gatherer societies were prevalent, there was no internet, there was no printing press. And for the most part, writing didn't really exist. It's estimated that the human brain back then processed 50,000 times less social information than we do today. To be specific, the estimates are about 1 megabyte of social information each day during hunter-gatherer times compared to about 75 gigabytes today. So this means that the neocortex operates far beyond its cognitive capacity. And when something operates beyond its capacity, it's prone to malfunction. The brain's ability to draw rational conclusions based on available information is diminished, and the neocortex begins to make errors because it must make drastic leaps in logic to overcome information overload. Now, why is this the case? Why are we so overloaded by information? Well, modern society is hyper connected. We no longer operate in bands of 50. In fact, with the internet, we now operate in a collective network to the tune of roughly 6 billion people. And add to that the nature of social media, which allows for virtually uncontrolled flow of information from any node in this 6 billion person network to any other node in the network, then you have the makings of a civilization that is rife with information overload. And this manifests itself in many different ways that we're familiar with today. Extreme fear, the breakdown of social cohesion, growing loneliness epidemic, brain rot, particularly among younger generation, a mental health death spiral, and the list goes on and on. But knowing this also gives us the power to be intentional with how we navigate this new reality, and if done correctly, can save yourself from the fatal traps that most people fall into. Instead, you can use this to your advantage and create a life that's free of unnecessary mental clutter and self-destructive behaviors. Now, to do so, you need to understand the three truths about the media. And once you grasp these ideas, I think everything will become much more clear to you. You'll be able to draw a clear connection between the current public discourse and the internal strife and the social unrest that seems to have grown to epidemic proportions today. So let's talk about it. But before we dive in, if you want to be more intentional about the information that you're consuming, then I highly encourage you to pick up the updated and enhanced version of the Self-Reinvention Cheat Code, which is a 57-page interactive guide that'll help you to cut through all of the unnecessary distractions that are out there and get insanely focused on leveling up your life. It's a fully interactive workbook, and as an added bonus, I've included over 10 hours of podcast style interviews with people who have all created extraordinary lives for themselves. So you can learn from other regular and everyday people who have already done what you are trying to do. So pick it up when you get a chance. Link is in the description below. And now let's go over the three truths about the media. So truth number one is that you, yes, you are the mainstream media. So there's a lot of talk about distrust in the mainstream media. But if you participate in any form of social media, then you are most likely a contributing participant of the mass media machine. With very few exceptions, everything that you do, everything that you post shapes the narratives that fuel society. The vacation that you posted about, the opinion about that politician that you love or that you hate, it's all contributing to the body of information out there that influences other people's understanding of the world. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. What you post could very well be benign, or it could have the power to inspire other people into action for better or for worse. But just know that mass media is not just a few large corporations with million-plus viewer bases. It's not an us versus them thing. We are all collectively implicated. Now, I always say that we are living in a simulation dictated firstly by the physical laws of the universe, and secondly by the narratives that society collectively chooses to believe. So in the past, the narratives that governed society were communicated through oral tradition, through song, through poetry. But as civilization evolved, as technology advanced, the medium of the narrative also evolved. Oral tradition gave way to scribes and orators, and then orators gave way to writing letters and the printing press. And then the printing press gave way to television and radio, and finally television and radio has given way to the internet and news platforms and social media. And with each evolution of media came an exponential spread of ideas by people who previously couldn't spread those ideas. And so today, here we are with an overload of information. This is how we all became participants in the mass media culture. Now, truth number two. Nobody is truly a free thinker because media subconsciously dictates our opinions and shapes our perceptions of reality. You may think that you make decisions on your own free will, but that is just not the case. Virtually everything that we understand about life and the universe is based on narratives that someone else told us to believe. Buying a wedding ring to symbolize lifelong commitment, that comes from a narrative. Competing to go to the best schools so that we can land a good paying job, that comes from a narrative. We make decisions within the boundaries of the narratives that we are told to follow. But if we were truly free-thinking people, then we would operate far outside of those narratives. We wouldn't limit ourselves to choosing which wedding ring to buy or choosing which school to attend and which discipline, which subject matter to major in. So while we make decisions throughout our lives, we're usually choosing from a preset selection of options that society has presented to us. Thus, we operate under the illusion of choice and free will, but in reality, we're guided into whichever direction that the conventional narratives point us towards. Okay, now truth number three is that the most effective media intentionally mischaracterizes reality and plays on human emotion for financial gain. Because mass media has been democratized and because you, me, everyone is now the media, anyone with a computer and internet access can create and perpetuate narratives, oftentimes for financial gain. And this is where the problem lies, because when financial gain is the motive, truth and honesty take a back seat to intentionally bending reality and inciting fear, anger, animosity, hatred, or anything else that's likely to create engagement. And despite how bad these narratives make people feel, they do nonetheless spike dopamine, which is the addiction hormone, which keeps people coming back for more. This is why when you hear terrible news, you lock in for even more information, which only amplifies whatever emotions you are feeling. So to put it bluntly, the media culture that we currently exist within, it has a vested interest in making sure that you are not in a good mental space, because existing in a state of inner peace, tranquility, confidence, abundance, that's bad for business. So now that you know the 3 truths about the media, I want to share a few pointers for protecting yourself and refocusing your energy to being in a place of inner peace, of joy, of fulfillment. So firstly, you need to either eliminate or minimize news media consumption. Cut out all news that is not immediately relevant to you. This means no more 24-hour news cycles, no more morning news briefs about world events. If you recall, 2020 to 2021, that was a really crazy time. And so as part of my own health and wellness journey, I came to this point where I just stopped following the news. I went into a state of willful ignorance, and my stress, my anxiety levels absolutely plummeted like a rock, because I no longer received this constant feed of sensationalized information that's specifically crafted to invoke internal chaos in my mind. And by aggressively cutting back on the news, you'll have done like 80% of the work that's needed to be in a healthier mental state and to avoid making counterproductive decisions as a result of succumbing to the reality bending narratives that bring out the worst in people. Now, secondly, you need to ruthlessly filter your social media. Take an inventory of the content that you receive and the profiles that you follow, and ask yourself, does this align with my vision for life? It's a very simple question that should have a pretty straightforward answer. And if you do this honestly, then you'll filter out the information that is completely irrelevant to your life. So let's say your vision entails achieving inner peace, living a low-key lifestyle where you have an abundance of time and energy to spend quality time with family or close friends. If this is the case, then the rage bait style of content that's prevalent on social media, that should be banished from your feeds. Only allow narratives that inspire you to become the best version of yourself, and let everything else go. Even if it's a narrative that you agree with, if it doesn't align with your highest and best version of your future self, then you have to cut it out of your life. Now, this is a good segue into the next tip, which is to predict the narrative. So whenever you receive information, whether it's news, formal education, social commentary, online content, understand that there is always, and I repeat, there is always a narrative behind it that someone is trying to promote. It may or may not be good or bad. That's beside the point. Just know that someone stands to benefit by presenting information in a way that influences you to believe in a certain ideology, to spend money, to take some form of action. Even this video, it's literally me trying to promote a narrative that'll convince you to adopt my view of the world, to take action, to change your life accordingly. And because I do run a business, I hope that you potentially book a consultation with me. Understanding this allows you to make a much more well-informed decision as to whether or not my content is beneficial for your consumption. So by predicting the narrative, you're more likely to understand the real intention or motive behind the information that people, that political groups, that businesses are putting out there. Now, a simple thing that you can do to predict the narrative is to ask the question, what's the motive behind this? What's the motive behind this post, this article, this tweet, this policy, this lecture? Try to answer this question as best you can. And oftentimes you will see through the politicians, through the grifters, through the snake oil salesmen, through the narcissistic personalities, and anyone else who turns to manipulation for personal gain. And once you make a habit of predicting the narrative, then you're ready for the next step, which is to selectively curate a small assortment of long format media sources. Now, there's an emphasis on long format because it gives you a much more well-informed picture. When someone is presenting information at length, you're getting much more context that either supports the idea that's being presented or presents inconsistencies that cause you to doubt the validity of the information. And what's more is that long format content is more of a slow burn. It doesn't produce those addiction forming dopamine spikes in rapid succession the same way that short form content does. So if you're doing all of the other things that I talked about, you're minimizing news consumption, you're filtering social media and predicting the narrative, then curating long format media sources becomes infinitely easier because you've already done the work of vetting and filtering out media that's likely to lead you down a path of internal chaos. So you're left with an inflow of information that's conducive to a growth mindset, to intentional living, being in a healthy mental space, which significantly improves your quality of life. And this is what lifestyle design is all about. It's about making conscious decisions about how you live your life on a daily basis to optimize your short time here on earth. And if you'd like to continue this discussion, then feel free to schedule a consultation with me so that we can explore pathways for you to live more intentionally for better health and for better living. And don't forget to pick up a copy of the Self-Reinvention Cheat Code, link in the description below. That's all that I have for you today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed the message. And until next time, always remember to get up, get out, and get after it. Peace.